Welcome to the Your Diabestie podcast, the podcast that ensures you don't have to do diabetes alone. I'm your Diabestie, Mila Clark, and I'm kind of scared to record today's episode, if I'm being absolutely honest. I just felt like it needed to be done and it needed to be said. And I have consulted attorneys, read my contracts top to bottom, just tried to gain some understanding about the situation. And it actually, while I was upset about the entire situation as it was unfolding, I realized that there was a lot of freedom for me in talking about this topic. And so today we're talking a little bit about diabetes and job loss, but also talking about advocating for yourself. And I've had this conversation with friends for a couple of weeks now, just kind of talking about how I should move forward and what I should do. And every single friend that I have has basically told me, you would tell anybody else on this earth, anybody else, to advocate for themselves. Why aren't you doing the same for yourself? And I was kind of like, that's true. Like, I shouldn't be scared of this. I shouldn't have to keep this to myself. And especially because my contract that I had in place doesn't stipulate that I can't say anything. I think what the right thing to do here is say something and is share with people the experience that I had. Because all in all, this experience in itself was just probably one of the most awful things that I think has ever happened to me in my work life. I have a background in journalism, and so I've worked mostly in marketing, and I've been a freelance journalist for about 8 years now. And so I have an interesting perspective on work. And whenever people are like, why do you want to freelance? What's the point? It's because of things like this. I don't even know where to start. I guess the beginning is the best place to start. Whew. I'm shaking over here about to tell this story because I don't think that I've said this out loud to anyone but friends. And I think at the end of the day, this goes completely back to me being more savvy about my contracts, because as much as I feel like this company that I worked for is to blame for the way that the situation went down, I also had a part in this because I scrutinized another contract that I didn't realize wasn't going to be in place, and not the one that actually ended up being in place. And so part of me feels a little bit bait and switched because I was told that I had to sign this agreement to be able to take on work, and that changes weren't allowed in this agreement. And at the time, this is one of my biggest contracts. This is one of my biggest clients, really, because I'm a freelancer. And so for me, it was like, okay, well, if I can't do any work unless I sign this contract, then I'm going to sign the contract, right? Like, what would you do? You would sign the contract. And so I read it. I didn't agree with a lot of the things in it, but they assured me, like, oh, this is just a standard agreement that everyone has to sign. Let me tell you, it is the shittiest agreement I think I've ever signed in my life. It gives them ownership of all of the work that I produced for them, which I typically would never allow. I would allow my work to be licensed. I wouldn't allow it to be just taken. Um, it also allowed for them to cancel the contract at any time for any reason, which they did. However, they didn't cancel it with a reason. They just canceled it and told me business needs have changed. I'm already upset thinking about this. So let's start in 2020. 2020 was the year of COVID and just wrecked everyone. I was almost a year into a job that I really liked but felt overwhelmed by and felt like I just wasn't good enough for. At the time, I was just kind of trying to find some balance and manage everything, manage my emotions, manage my commute to work. It was really, really hard, but it was a nice step in my career. And it, I think, made me a better writer. And I'm so appreciative of my editor there now because I feel like it really me to become much stronger writer. But it was overwhelming for me. It was really hard. And I had direct contact with patients. And so that was also really, really difficult, especially when they're going through treatments. It was just very like emotionally difficult, taxing over. I had gotten an opportunity for this startup from Healthline called Bezzy, but the community that I worked in was T2D Healthline. And this was when I thought that I had a type 2 diabetes diagnosis. And so I was selected as the guide for this community, which the community guide is basically the community manager, answering questions, sharing experiences, encouraging people to be a part of the community, encouraging people to live their best lives with diabetes. I love this. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to do community management for people that I get and people who get me. And so I felt like I was perfect for this job. And I recognized, though, that I wouldn't be able to do that job and do my full-time job. And so I made the decision right before COVID to quit my full-time job and go all in on doing Hangry Woman and doing this community management project. I had a contract. It lasted a year. And then in 2021, and 2022, things kind of shifted at this company. And so they were acquired by a larger health organization, I guess, and a lot of their properties were combined. And that just meant that there were going to be some like changes around like what the community was called and how it was branded. And so that all was great. Like, that wasn't a problem, but I worked under the promise of a contract coming. And I can only speak for myself. There are other people in these positions who are still in their positions and you can't speak for their experiences. But for me, working, almost 2 years with no contract and just kind of like a handshake agreement of, well, you can deal with this. Here's what we have for you. That to me was unprofessional, but like I said, it was my biggest contract at the time. And so I needed it. Like I was operating under a good faith assumption, which honestly never do in business. Nobody has good faith in business. Like, the minute that someone can turn on you, they will turn on you. And that's why contracts exist. But at the time I was like, you know what? I'm working really hard in this community. I'm doing a lot of community management. I'm helping people here. I'm good with doing this. This is what I feel like I need to do. I'm not going to withdraw myself or pause from helping the community because I don't have a contract in place. It's just not the kind of person I am, and it's not the kind of person I ever will be. I am empathetic. I help people first. I often help people before I help myself. And I wasn't going to just give up on this community and leave this community. So, fast forward 2023, promise of a contract. I read the contract and I'm like, absolutely not. The language in here wants to own my likeness in perpetuity. I was being given basically an extra job that I wouldn't have gotten paid for necessarily, and extra responsibilities that would have taken me over the hours that they wanted me to work, just based on like how much research and how much trying to answer questions I was doing in the community. And so I raised the flags about all of those things. And I went back and forth for almost 3 months to get this contract signed. So I was still almost all of the beginning of 2023 without a contract, without working with a contract, because I was trying to advocate for myself and fight for myself and say, like, this language is not right. This language is not like conducive to the safety of me, the worker who is like putting in this time. And so like we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, finally got a contract signed, I believe in like August. Right. And this contract gets signed, and then we get told, okay, well, now you have to decide if you want to be a W-2 employee of the company or if you want to be a 1099 independent contractor, and you have to sign this new agreement. And so I look at the agreement. I'm like, I don't like this, but I'm told you can't change any of the language in it. This is the standard operating agreement and we're not changing it. So like basically take the job or and sign it or don't and see ya. And again, like, over 3 years, like through COVID, through all of this time, I've built these great relationships in this community with all of these people. I've helped to get this app like massive. Like the app has a lot of users. And I'm just kind of like floored that like I don't get an opportunity to advocate for myself in this way, and that I'm basically being told like sign this contract or get out. And so like for my community and for myself, I'm like, okay, the safety is in signing the contract. I signed the contract. And then this is where it gets sticky. There were just so many things. Like I had to keep an email address for the company. I had to log on and be like present on the company Slack. We had, meetings. We had like all of these things. And I had the choice. So I'm not saying that like I was forced to do this at all, but I had the choice to be an independent contractor or to be an employee. And I chose an independent contractor because I run my own business and I didn't want to complicate my taxes any more than they needed to be. And so for me, it was kind of like, okay, like this is what I'm going to do. And this is what's personally best for me. Mind you, everyone else on the team signed up to be W-2 employees. So I think that they all took the really smart way. I definitely took the dumb way in all of this. And so as a contractor, they can cancel the contract at any time. And I was in a place where I had noticed, and this is kind of where this all kicked off from my perspective. From what it sounds like, this was in the works for a while, and they just didn't communicate it. They didn't think to give me a heads up. They didn't think to tell a person that they hired who has a disability that they are sunsetting them off of the project, and just to at least give me some more time to find something else to supplement. And so I had noticed basically that I wasn't getting paid on time, that it was taking a really long time for my timesheets to get approved. And it was like early October and I still hadn't been paid for something in August. And I had reached out to my manager of the project and basically said like, hey, I noticed that I have some late payments and I'm thinking that the structure of being a 1099 person isn't going to work for me just because like I can't wait 3 months to be paid for work, like that's not okay, I think, in any capacity, or 2 months, I guess, in this case. And so I sent a Slack message. I never hear anything back. I send a text. I never hear back. This is where it gets annoying. Communication is not hard. Saying something is not hard. Person to person is the right thing to do. And what really upset me was that this was something known and they didn't communicate it with me. It seems like on purpose. And I can't understand it. I honestly can't. So then I think it was the next day, I get a call from the contractor company that handles all of our invoicing and our work profiles and all of that. And I'm thinking, oh, because I asked to be changed to a W-2, maybe they're calling to walk me through the process and tell me what's going on. They essentially tell me that there are no more resources for my project and my project is ending immediately. They'll send me an email and give me the full details about the next steps. And so on the phone, I'm like, this is really weird because I just reached out to my manager and asked about changing it to be a W-2 employee. Like, does this have to do with that? Or like, I'm very confused right now. Like on the phone, I was stunned because like that's not the phone call that I thought that I was going to get. And the person on the phone literally read a script to me. They would not answer a single question that I had. Um, every time I would ask a question, they would repeat the script. And so at that point, I was like, okay, just send me an email then. Send it to me in writing and fine. And so they send me an email. I screenshot that email. I sit on it for a little while during the day because I'm just like, okay, like maybe like the manager's going to get back to me. Because at this point, I still have access to Slack. I still have access to my email. I still have access to like the community that I'm managing, and nobody has told me otherwise. I still have in that community, we had live chats. I had mine 4 days a week. And in the community, like basically they essentially said, no, I don't even know how to explain it. Like I had things scheduled and they didn't tell me to unschedule them. But the people who called me to tell me I didn't have a job anymore told me to stop working immediately. So I had to take it upon myself to get answers to questions and figure out what was going on because nobody would talk to me or communicate with me. And the company, they're called MBO Partners, they were like, you need to direct all of your questions to us. And I was like, but you're not answering my questions. You're copy pasting responses. I'm not getting any answers from you. And I'm asking questions to you very directly, and you're not sharing anything. So, like, I want to talk to someone who works on the team that I worked on to at least get some kind of clarity or clearance. And part of me thinks that like maybe I just don't want to know. Maybe I was fucking up and nobody told me. And it just was like a situation where they didn't want me to be in the position anymore. But the least I feel that they could have done was one, communicated with me what was up, told me what was going to happen. Two, give me an opportunity to communicate to my community that I wouldn't be their person anymore. And three, to like give me the opportunity to make some kind of statement or say like a goodbye. I didn't get any of that. And so I had to take it upon to reach out to someone else in the organization to say, hey, I'm not sure what's going on, but I was told that I have to stop working on the app immediately. Can you cancel my chats? I'm not sure. I tried to reach out to this person and this person and this person, and nobody's answering my questions. And I'm just like very confused about what's going on, but hopefully I'll get some more clarity. Like, it was just so fucked up, you guys, and I can't understand it. I can't understand just not having a conversation. I worked on this community for 3 years. I lent my voice, I lent my expertise, I lent my abilities of community management. And it's not to say that I'm perfect. I'm not perfect at all. And, honestly, in the past 6 or so months, I was going through some really crappy mental health issues that drained me of a lot of my energy. I just didn't feel good. And that wasn't something that I vocalized. I just kept trying to do my job as best as I could, but getting no responses, getting no one saying anything to me. That I think is what really upset me in the entire situation and made it something that could have been like a nice parting of ways to being something that was just highly, highly unprofessional. Something else that happened in the whole frenzy of this is that I reached out to someone who was like a more senior position than me. And I sent them the email that I got. And I was like, hey, I don't know anything about this. Do you know anything about this? Like, I can't get any information. Nobody is responding to me. And so, like, bless her for trying to get information. And all that she got was them saying it was an HR/legal issue and they can't discuss it. But that's even more than they told me. I only knew that because somebody else had to reach out on my behalf. And I find that just to be so unprofessional, so disgusting, so just like awful. And that is why, like, I'm kind of in this place where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to talk about this because, especially as a person who living with a chronic disease and somebody who has a disability, I really feel like companies have to be intentional about the way that they treat people. And not just for the like legal ways, but for the ethical ways too. Because someone who's living with a disability is not in a great position to begin with. I didn't have a lot of savings because I had to pay for a lot of my mom's funeral expenses last year. I was kind of like barely making ends meet with all of my stuff and what it takes to run all of my stuff. I was just in a place where I was like, having a difficult time. And, I think a lot of us with chronic illnesses, like the little bit of savings that we do have, like it's reserved for emergencies. It's reserved for like, maybe we need help affording medication that month, or we need something to be able to like get us through emergency services if we have to go that route, or we're saving because we know we've got, the potential of a hospital bill coming up because of a what's it called, like a comorbidity or a complication of the disease that we're living with. And so for me, it was kind of like, you guys claim that you represent and you are a place of belonging for people with chronic illnesses, but then you treat someone who dedicates, and granted, I was paid, so I wasn't like dedicating my time, like it wasn't a volunteer, but you treat someone who is working for you, who has a chronic illness, who you have used essentially to build your community, build your platform, and then you kick them to the curb without any notice. You ghost them, you don't say anything. Then I think the thing that like just like pushed me over the edge, and I don't get angry about stuff, but the thing that made me so angry was that after the fact, they sent me an email and they were like, "We clearly intended to reach out to you before MBO did, and obviously that didn't happen, but this parting of ways isn't personal, it's just business." And I really scoffed at that. I wrote a very long email back. I might post it in the show notes so that you guys can see how I advocated for myself. But to me, it isn't just business, it is personal. And especially when you are working with someone with a chronic illness and you don't communicate and you leave them in the lurch and you cause more anxiety. Like the night that I got that email, or that like the day that I got that email, I was freaking out, but I didn't sleep for the entire night. I sat on the floor like hyperventilating, like I just lost my position and I don't know why, and no one's talking to me, and like why are they ghosting me, and why aren't they saying anything, and why aren't they giving me any answers to my questions, and like what does this mean for me? This is my biggest contract, my biggest client. Like what am I supposed to do now? As an independent contractor, there is no recourse. There is no recourse. There's no unemployment. It is just you, and you have to figure that shit out. And the anxiety and the distress and the upset that this caused, just for me, like they can say it's just business, but it was especially personal for me because I didn't get to say goodbye to my friends and the community. I'm here for every single person who has diabetes who feels like they don't have someone. I feel like it really does sound stupid, but it's genuine. I want people to feel supported. I want people to feel like they're not judged. I want people to feel like they have someone they can go to and talk to and learn from and with. And I spent 3 years talking to these people 4 days a week, sometimes more, 4 days a week for, an hour-long chat, but, like, answering their questions every single day. Like, we got to know each other on a friendship basis, and so to be pulled from that and for me not to be able to say my piece, I think that was the part that was just heartbreaking for me, and that's the part that also felt personal because it is personal. Like, those people weren't just business to me. They were people with diabetes who needed and wanting help and a place where they felt like they belonged. And that feels extremely personal. I don't think you can say that that's just business. To them, it was, but to me, it was. One other thing that I thought was really funny, I had some friends reach out to me who were in the community who like found my website, found my email, just kind of knew me from the work I did. Also, they knew about Hangry Woman. They knew about like all of these things that I do. And what I thought was so funny, one of the things is that the people who run the community at Desi, I guess, had posted a notice or like an announcement that I was no longer the guide for the community. And from the screenshot that the friend sent me, they had essentially said she will be greatly missed. And so someone commented on the post and they were basically like, whoever this Mila person is, like, she sounds like she was really awesome. Like, why isn't she there anymore? Did she die? Because I guess like that she will be greatly missed. I don't know. It's funny things like like I'm so dark humored, and so things like that just make me laugh and kind of let me see the humor and the light in all of this. And really the bright spot for me is that I get to go on a new adventure. I get to try something else. I'm in a very scary period of flux where I don't know if I'm going to be able to maintain my blog. I don't want to shut it down. I don't want to get rid of it, but I also am kind of at the point where I'm like, I know that with the level that I brought it to and the abilities that I have, I can't keep going at the same speed to do Hangry Woman full time and do a full time job again. Because at this point, I'm going to have to get a full time job. And I can do that in something that I love. But like I have clients that I really love and appreciate. There's just like a lot that I've built this business around, and I built it around what I thought was safety. I thought that this project with a massive corporation was going to be a point of safety and a place of safety. And this was something steady that I could count on. There was nothing in the 3 years of working for them, maybe aside from everything that I told y'all with like, not having a contract, all of that stuff. Maybe the red flags were there and this was just now this is my way of seeing them. But, for me, it gave me the ability to start Hangry Woman, and I was able to take on just as much work as I could take on. And then when that kind of slipped, it became like a shoot, what do I do? What happens now? I don't know where this goes or what I'm doing or how I can even do this. I literally have a sign here on my desk that says, I'm pretty sure I have no idea because I don't. And I am smart, I'm capable, I'm savvy, I'm extremely strategic. I have a great head on my shoulders. I have everything going for me. Hangry Woman is my passion. It's what I want to do for the rest of my life. But I realize that not every plan works out. And sometimes plans change and you wonder why. But then I don't know, life shows it to you. So all of this to say that your Diabestie is broke. And I'm trying my best to figure out what the next steps forward are. If that means that I can't do as much Hangry Woman, it's sad, but that's what it means for the time being. And nothing is forever, ever, ever, ever. So things happen, things come up. But I don't know, like my whole life has always been dedicated to helping people. I have always been a helper. I've always been someone who wants to help, who wants to give people as much as I can. And I think that I just have to continue to be a helper, and your Diabestie will be back on her feet. So that's kind of it for this podcast and this story. I don't know. That's where it ends abruptly. They finally did pay me my payment for like August in November. So my brain is just like, this is wild. And I'm still waiting for the rest of my pay. So that's kind of where we are. That's really it. There's nothing else that I can do. I've read the contract back and forth, up and down, and basically like they put in writing that they're allowed to do this. And so that's what they did. And it sucks. But I think the lesson here is two things. It's advocate for yourself, speak up, and be a good communicator. The second is that you owe it to yourself to always do your best work, but you also owe it to yourself to always stand up for yourself. And you are not a bad person for speaking up. You're not a bad person for telling your truth, and you shouldn't be scared to do that. And you should never be contractually obligated to not speak up about wrongdoings because that's not cool. It's not cool at all. So learn from my mistakes, besties. And yeah, don't do that. All right. So that's the end of today's podcast. Thank you for listening. You can always send me an email at mila@hangrywoman.com if there's something that you want me to address. I also have a little Ask Me Anything section on my website. So you can tap in, ask me anything you'd like. And I am happy to address you, my besties, my Diabesties, on the podcast and answer any questions that you have. So thank you so much for being here. Take care of yourselves. Love you, Diabesties. Bye.